shot these two boys off their horse, and he went over to rob them. He was robbing Eversole, and he got over at Combs' boy, I reckon, and was robbing him. And he woke up. He come back and he said, "What'd you shoot me for, Tom?" He knew him a little bit, and old Tom just shot him right between the eyes, man. Can't leave no witnesses. When he was 12 years old, they said he took fits, and everybody's afraid of him in the community. You know, he's a bad dude, and he'd even spit up blood. You know, the doctors knew what. Well, they didn't know what it was. People around town, they wanted to run him out or shoot him, and this old boy, this doctor. But he'd been treating Tom for these fits. He started taking these fits again, see? And he'd been treating him. But anyhow, they all got drunk, and the doctor went over to Tom's bed. He was laying passed out, man. And he went over a couple times that night, that woman said that, and threatened to kill Tom. Well, Tom knew he'd had a gun because he'd been bragging about it and showing it to him, you know, earlier that day. So she woke Tom up and told him, said the doctor said 2 or 3 times that he was going to come over and kill him. So he just went over and shot the doctor, man. He was laying in bed sleeping.
The woman's house he was at was Catherine McQuinn. She lived over at Old Quicksand Road, about 3 or 4 miles outside of Jackson. And she wanted to send for the doctor to come observe him having one of his seizures. And when the doctor got there, Bad Tom Smith was just too drunk to be able to help out with observations. And sometime during the night, Bad Tom Smith woke up and he shot the doctor while he slept. I've heard rumors of people saying that the doctor went just to party with him, just to have a good time with him. And I've heard rumors that the old woman would wake Bad Tom up and keep telling him that the doctor was going to kill him. And so Bad Tom decided to kill the doctor first. But the way I've seen all written accounts, they just say that Bad Tom just woke up and shot the doctor where he slept. And he was a pretty prominent doctor, and for that reason he was tried and he was sentenced to death, to hang.
I think one of the reasons none of the Smiths will ever agree that Tom Smith killed Dr. Rader that night was that Tom Smith had an affliction that a lot of the Smiths had that carried down in the family, grand mal seizures. If you've ever seen a grand mal seizure up close, or ever had one, you don't get up and do anything. You don't get up. You're too weak. It takes help just to get out of the bed, one on either side trying to walk you. He had them all night. At that day and time, if you were dying, you seldom ever got a doctor. He had a doctor there all night, which says it must have been serious. None of us can believe that he got up in the middle of the night after having seizures all night and shot anybody.
That was a big thing, that hanging. That they come in here from all over. He run 3 counties anyhow, you know, down Leslie and Knott and Breathitt and Perry and well, he run quite a few counties.
About 5,000 people came to Jackson that day. It was like a big revival. Jackson only has 2,466 people today, so you can imagine 100 years ago how small it would be. And for 5,000 people to come in, it was a pretty big deal around these parts. Everybody from far and near came from counties. Press came from northern Kentucky, from Cincinnati. They came from all over. It's like a big revival. They came on horseback and muleback and wagons and buggies, and they picnicked, and everybody had a real good time. The people, they would go look at Bad Tom while he was in the jail to see if he was there or not. They thought it was really big.
They said they brought him some, his last supper, man, they brought him fried chicken and tater, you know, vegetables and milk. His sister was there, his sister and his brother were there waiting, you know. And he told old Sheriff Combs, they said his name, Sheriff Combs, is the one that finally did the hanging. Said that he told him that he'd like to have as much time on the scaffold as he possibly could get, you know. Of course, you can't blame the man. I mean, I would too. And he promised him that he could talk. Well, he got up there and he prayed for 15 minutes, man. 15 solid minutes he was praying for God to forgive him and things, you know, and telling the boys, young boys in the community, in the town, he said, whiskey and wild women got me here. And he said, you boys, he said, I see the light now, and he said, y'all remember that and don't get in the same shape I'm in.
Well, that one account that was told by Pap Joel Turner, he told that to several people on Turner's Creek. That was where he was from, and there were probably several people from the creek who went to the hanging, and he was one of them. And he did say that he wished that he hadn't gone to it after he was there. A lot of people were that same way. Women passed out, and people got sick, but he was there, and he said while Bad Tom was up on the scaffold, when he was telling about some of his about the bad women and all that, he was saying that he felt that he was forgiven by God for a lot of things, but on his conscience there was the murder of a little child that he didn't think that God would forgive him for that. He said that the little girl thought he was just playing with him. Bad Tom took her to the well, and he was holding on to her arms, and she was down there, and he told them how she looked up at him and she smiled, thinking he was just playing a game. Then he just let her go to die, and there she died. And they hung him, I believe, right behind the jail, right across the street. And everybody was really quiet. Everybody, they were all excited, thinking they were seeing a real big deal. But then when he got up there and they saw he was about to hang, everybody got really quiet. They realized this was a man was going to die that day. And he got there, and they tied his arms and they tied his legs, and then they just hung him. The last thing Smith heard was the sound of Sheriff Combs chopping the rope, and then he just sank and his neck broke, and I've heard people say you can almost hear it break above the sudden hush of the crowd.
The beast with horns shall come upon you, one with 7, one with 10. Then you shall cry unto the heavens, will call to God but cannot win. When the fire comes down from heaven, and the blood shall fill the sea, I'll be carried on by Jesus, and forever with him be.
Well, it happened in our community, and we knew the family, and we just heard it talked over and over. It's something handed down, a story, a true story, handed down, and it's something you didn't forget. We're so used to the things now happening that you don't dwell on them. But that was something that lingered in your mind and has all down through the years.
Robert Flannery, my papa, was 11 years old when his mother, Ellen Flannery, was killed. Ellen was left widowed. Her husband, Art Flannery, was killed in a logging accident. a logging truck crushed his leg, and then he died of gangrene. So it wasn't an immediate death, but he died of that. And left her with 5 children. They lived at the head of Pert Creek, the very last house in the holler. And so she had a pretty tough time of it with those kids. And she went out to pick salad greens. Robert was going to town to try and get some groceries. He had an uncle that was going to help him get some groceries there. And so she was out picking salad greens, and that's when Floyd killed her.
He had hit her with a rock and knocked her down, and said, Grandma said he got a knife and said, Grandma said, you don't have to use that, you've already killed me. And then he cut her throat, and she bled to death.
I was 2 in April, she was killed in May.
Do you know where your mother's buried at?
Down to her mine, my daddy and mother both buried down there. Up on the hill there, where all them garages is to her mine. Up there. We didn't know where they's at for a long time, and me and my brother and sister finally got somebody to know where they's buried, and we got tombstones and put up. They said his mother was the cause of it, but she said he wasn't. Well, Floyd said on it when they was hanging him, his mother didn't have nothing to do with it. They told it, because a preacher walked my mother home from church down here at Maycock, and they said she got jealous or something. That's the only thing I ever heard.
She was walking up the holler, and he started walking with her, and he picked a rose and put it in her lapel just about the time they were even with this other woman's home. And she was sitting on the front porch with her son, Floyd. And then they proceeded on up the holler, and we don't know if he stopped at this woman's house on the way back out or not, but he apparently gave her a kiss when he got up to her house, to Ellen's house. The story goes then that this woman had turned to her son Floyd and told him that that she would buy him a new blue serge suit that he had been looking at in the Sears and Roebuck catalog if he would do something to Ellen Flannery. And I don't know how specific she was, but apparently, or as the story goes, he went around telling neighbor kids that he was going to get that new suit. And they asked him how, and he said, I just have to do what Mama told me to do to Ellen Flannery.
Heard so many different stories about it. He was retarded, and nowadays they wouldn't even hang a man for that. In that case, you know, some people said he got a new suit to do that. You see, now you think a person in that category, he'd do anything if he was that way, you know.
They came back from Whitesburg, which was, in my opinion, an all-day thing because they had to walk. And Grandma hadn't returned. And they went ahead and stayed the night by themselves. And the next morning, I was told a man came to look for Grandma and came back the next morning and she hadn't returned. And then I was told that Uncle Bob went down the creek a-hunting for her, and they got a search party together. And somebody rode into Whitesburg to get the sheriff and the magistrate come to organize the search party.
They reported she was missing, and they went out, they sent a search out to hunt for her, and they went over there, and Floyd went with them, and he helped hunt, and he'd make suggestions where she might be. And then they found her down there in some rocks. And
she was found in what they call a ravine, where 2 hills went together and a creek ran down, you know. And said 2 men started up in there and said, Floyd said, well, you don't have to go up there, I've already looked. And about that time, a man hollered and said, here she is. And she was covered up with rocks, and one of her hands was sticking out.
My understanding is that his father had so much influence that he was never, prior to being hung, for that entire period of time, he was never behind bars. And someone asked him, Floyd, why don't you run? Why don't you leave? Go somewhere? And his response was that that would be against the law. So, I mean, again, that's another pretty powerful indication that he was not really of fit mind to stand trial.
See, they came in here from all four corners of the earth. I mean, you know, in counties, different places. There's from Virginia, West Virginia, Tennessee, as far as Tennessee. They advertised this hanging quite a while. She said that it was so quiet in that town you could hear a pin drop. And she said, you see, when they cut the rope, the trapdoor rope, let him fall through, he's got the rope on his neck. Then they take the hatchet and they hit it two licks, you know. They go one, and then they turn the hatchet over and put the blade down, two, and that cuts the rope and down he goes through the trapdoor. And this lady said that you could hear that hatchet all the way down in the other end of town. Said it was so quiet you could hear that.
Some people didn't want his name mentioned because it's a disgrace to the Frazier family.
Valerie Jane Webb had a great big picture of Floyd Frazier, and he got gone. And you could look at him and tell you kind of mentally, you know, look at his eyes or something. He wasn't all there.
Do you have any pictures of your mother?
No, not a thing. Something went. I've never seen a picture of her. Somebody went in the house and got everything we had, they said. That's what my sister said, got the quilts and everything that they could carry off. When? After she was killed, you know.
I don't see why they want, you know, it's history. They can't keep it from being told. And I think it should be told how we feel, our side of it, not how he was hung, you know. Because there was 5 kids, you know. To me, you know, he was one person. There was 5 kids that suffered. They'd already lost their daddy, and then they lost their mother. Well, my mother would have had a mother. And I would have probably had a grandmother. You know, we never did know them. I'm not saying that something wouldn't have happened, but her whole family lived to be real old. You know, her sister, she had one sister that lived to be 103. So, you know, more than likely, my mother's 90, so more than likely she would have lived, you know, I would have known my grandmother if she hadn't been murdered. So I'd say it affected us good.
I hear